There are two approaches that you can use to interpret modes: the relative approach and the parallel approach. The relative approach tells us what we need to know about where the modes of a particular scale come from, which is useful because it helps us to understand why the modes of a particular scale are constructed in the way that they are. But it doesn't really do much for learning how to apply the modes to your playing, but more on that later. For example, the major scale has 7 modes, and most of you watching this probably already know 2 of them, whether you realize it or not. One is the major scale itself, and the other is the relative minor, also known as the natural minor scale. If you already understand the theory behind relative minor and relative major keys, modes are very similar to that. If you don't know what relative minor means, basically every major key has a relative minor key that contains exactly the same notes, but it recognizes the 6th chord of that major scale as the tonal center. In C major, the relative minor key is A minor. Why? Because A is the 6th note in the C major scale, and the 6th chord in any major scale is always a minor chord. So when you're working with the C major scale as an example, if you build a chord from the 6th degree of that scale, which is A, the resulting chord would be minor in tonality. And if you build a scale from the 6th degree of the C major scale, then you would get an A natural minor scale, the relative minor. Basically, the relative minor is a mode of the major scale. And the same goes for the other scales that you can build from any of the other notes in the major scale. For example, if you build one from the 2nd degree of the major scale, then that would give you a scale formula that we recognize as the Dorian mode. So looking at this on the guitar, the resulting modes of the C major scale are C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian or natural minor, and B Locrian. Listen to me play those once again. That right there is why the relative approach is only useful for understanding where modes come from, not how to apply them. Because what that sounds like to me, and hopefully you as well, is just playing the C major scale but starting on a different root note every time, right? You can't really hear the mood of each of the modes when I play them like that. So that's what the relative approach is. It's when you view all of the modes in relation to their parent scale. In this case, the parent scale is the major scale. That's where all of the modes originate from. Now, I do actually teach the relative approach to my students to begin with. When they're first getting started with modes, I teach them the relative approach because I always think of it as being like the stabilizers on a bike, right? You need them to begin with when you're first getting to grips with this new thing, being modes. But when you move on to try applying modes to your guitar playing, you need something more. Enter the parallel approach. So what's different about the parallel approach is instead of viewing all of the modes in relation to their parent scale, which is what I just demonstrated earlier on in the video with C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, right? Just viewing them in relation to the major scale. Instead of that, you're now viewing them as independent scales. So you're ditching your stabilizers, meaning the parent scale, and now viewing them with the same root note. This will give you a clearer idea of the different sounds you can get with each mode. Playing through each of the 7 modes of the major scale using the same root note, that's what's going to give you a clearer idea of the different kind of sounds you get with each mode. So hopefully that gave you a better idea of the different sounds that you can create with each of the major scale modes. One thing I'd really recommend doing to familiarize yourself even further with the sound of each mode is to just sit and play the mode over and over again over the chord type that it fits with. And I'm not talking about sitting down and trying to, improvise some amazing Joe Satriani or Steve Vai-esque modal solo, because that's a lot to expect when you're new to something. This really is just a good exercise for getting your ears acquainted with the sound of each mode. Just take one position of each mode, create or find a loop of the chord type that it fits with, for example, C major, C minor, C7, C minor 7 flat 5, and practice playing over it using that one position. Now, I get that some of you watching this might not already know which modes and which chord types fit together. To help you get started with this, at the end of the video, I'll put up a chart showing you one position of each of the major scale modes in C, so using C as the root note for every single mode. And then next to each scale position, there will be a chord that you can use to play that mode over. So at home, what you can do is just find or just create a loop of each of those chord types. There's only 4 actually, and you can just practice playing the corresponding modes over them to get familiar with the sound of each major scale mode. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did learn something from it, please do give it a like down below. If you want to learn more about modes and how to apply them to your guitar playing, how to visualize them in any key and improvise with them confidently, I've got links in the description for my online guitar courses, Bulletproof Guitar Player Part 1 and Part 2. Part 2 tells you all you need to know about the major scale modes and how to apply them to your playing. So with those links in the description, you get up to 50% off, so check them out if you are interested. Don't forget to click subscribe for more videos like this in the future, and I will see you guys in the next one.